button. Yeah.
Hello all, this is Mahmoud Matsali on behalf of APGC. I would like to welcome you all to the 39th seminar, weekly run seminar, which is about education, creating harmony in in creation, sorry, harmony creation. We have 4 speakers in today's seminar. The first one that I want to ask her to prepare herself and talk gonna be Iman Ibrahim, a good friend of us from Ottawa, originally from Egypt, is one of the speakers. The second speaker gonna be, who will go the first one, the second one? Or I just go
Carlos.
up to you. Who said?
Carlos.
Carlos, okay. The second one, Carlos from Colombia. Welcome, Carlos. And the third one gonna be Sabrina, is that right? And
Yeah,
Rico gonna be...
but she was ill. She was suffering from migraine.
Oh, so we have 3 speakers. Okay, yeah. And the third one gonna be Rico. Okay, let's start by you, Iman. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mahmoud and Rico. And hello, everyone. Great to be here with you. For today's topic, I would like to talk about 3 points. The first one would be understanding the goal of education. The second one would be understanding what harmony means. And the third one would be understanding what creation is, so we can put them together. So with the first point, understanding the goal of education. From my work as a leadership and life coach, and also in conflict resolution, I always ask myself and anyone I'm coaching, what is the ultimate goal, the ultimate creativity and passion that the person desires? So, because if we are starting from the current conditions, we're limiting ourselves in a box. And instead of having a clear vision of the future that we would like to create. So for me, this is the first question that we need to ask ourselves. Who do we want this new generation to be? Do we want them to be perpetual codependents and copy managers, basically maintaining the status quo systems that we have? Or do we want them to be masters of creation, of healing, of harmony, with profound understanding of the universe and themselves and deep appreciation for our interdependence? Our choice of vision directs everything we do. The second point is understanding what harmony means. In simple terms, harmony means being in agreement, working well together, even if there are differences. So we can also say it's the balance of inner and outer worlds. So we need internal harmony, I believe, before we can create sustainable external harmony. If we want it to be sustainable, we have to start from within. And our internal harmony requires the balancing and integration of our 4 elements: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. We can't ignore any one of them. And there are 2, of course, brain and heart coherence is imperative for a healthy life. And total coherence, when we reach that, that's what we call healing. 2 important findings from my years working with conflict resolution and coaching. The first one is that our feelings are gifts, and they are windows to our needs. So we need to honor our feelings and use them as clues to identify what needs that we have that are met or unmet, and then act on that. Vern Redekop, he's an author of amazing books, and he refers to 5 categories of human identity needs: meaning, connectedness, security, recognition, and ability to take action. All of us humans have these 5 categories. The signifiers we use to fulfill them are different, which a different topic we can analyze, but we all have these needs, and we need to honor these needs in education. I totally believe that. And we have to honor them also in actual practice, not just as abstract notions. And I must say, from my experience with many, many people, emotional healing is the key to healing all the other three elements of us: the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. So the emotional is huge. The second point from my work, that finding that I would like to share, is that spiritual exploration of who we are reveals how expansive our souls are, beyond the physical limitations, beyond the limited logic that we use our brains to think of. It totally brings us to a higher perspective about life, about our purpose, about the events that are happening, the people around us, and how we can respond in a healthy way to all this. And to explore this spiritual reality of who we are, we need our intuition and our hearts. The heart is the strongest bioelectrical and biomagnetic generator in the body. In fact, there are 40,000 neurons in our hearts that function as a heart brain. You can call it that. And that helps us access memories objectively, instead of the duality of our brain, duality of perception of our brain, right, wrong, white, black, good people, bad people. We think about things in a totally different way. So our heart brain is the gift that helps us to give events and memories a deeper meaning, so we can learn from them and then let them go and heal. There is a quote by Einstein I absolutely love. He said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And I totally believe that we need to reclaim this gift. There is a profound spiritual understanding that is crucial in education. Otherwise, we can end up with depression and nothing making sense from difficult events, and it's a spiral, vicious cycle. So to put this in perspective, we have the power to heal and create internal harmony through changing our thoughts, words, and actions. We need to know who we are, our purpose, core values, gifts, wants, priorities, our shadow side that we even have been trying to suppress. And then we need to know how our thought process was programmed by our upbringing and environment, and deconstruct this past programming, because it's based on ego, judgment, fear. And then that was the wrong education that we received, and we need to avoid for the future. We need to reconstruct our thoughts, words, and actions towards our new desired vision. And our heart brain is the master for this reconstruction. This process we can refer to sometimes as the dark night of the soul, as an awakening. I would like to make sure that we all see how this process is not linear, and it's not once in a lifetime work. It's ongoing, and it has its waves and cycles. We grow and we learn in cycles. Once we have that internal harmony and we have this profound understanding, we can create sustainable external harmony through relational and institutional transformation. So for the purposes of this topic, I define harmony as the awareness, balance, and integration of our four elements on a personal, relational, and institutional levels. Now, we come to understanding what creation is. When we look at nature around us, we see that balance is key in creation and everything is interconnected. Isolated and separate systems only exist in scientific experiments, but they don't exist in reality. So we need an education that prepares people who are working in the various fields to appreciate this complementarity and interdisciplinarity. Whether intellectual, politicians, spiritual leaders, healers, any field, it's in us to create. And we do create all the time, consciously or subconsciously. And for me, it's not about right and wrong creation. It's about what works and what doesn't work for the vision that we have. What are we desiring? And to create consciously instead of subconsciously, this involves 4 steps. Energy, keeping high vibration, because we need to be at a certain level of energy to be able to create consciously. Number 2, our will or consciousness, knowing the why we are creating. Number 3, focused thoughts and words. And number 4, action in the direction of our focus. We also need to understand universal laws, since we and everything, whatever we create, we are all subject to these laws. So I will not get into all of them, but there are 7 major ones, such as polarity, gender, cause and effect. And we also need to understand that the aggregate reality that the world lives in, that we live in today, is the result of the choices that we made or allowed in the past, the aggregate choices that we made or allowed in the past. So if we want to make a better world, we need to make better, healthier choices. We are free to make choices, but we are not free to escape the consequences once we made the choices. Creation, and like there is excellent work by James Gilligan in his book, Shame, Guilt, and Violence, that really analyzes when things are unfair in the society, for example. Like he says, like, we created rules to specify what are the legitimate ways to fulfill our needs, and then we punish people who don't follow these legitimate ways. But as a society, we are all responsible when we don't give equal opportunities for people to access legitimate tools. So they end up using illegitimate, and then we punish them. So there is a lot to be said here. For me, creation has its rules, and it's more appropriately referred to as co-creation, because not a single person can create on their own. Creation, by definition, requires the creator, the field of creation, and the created to engage in a dance of possibilities. That's what I call it. And we need to honor our part in this dance and then have respect for the other parts that we don't play. To conclude everything, we need a clear vision, and we need to acknowledge that there is oneness and interdependence in creation. We have free will to make choices that bring more loving and harmonious consequences for all of us. And we need to explore the integration point that allows both the individual and the collective to thrive. Thank you.
Mahmoud, yeah, unmute.
Was that clear? Did you hear everything?
Okay, thank you, dear Iman. That was a wonderful presentation. We enjoyed that a lot. Before we invite the second speaker, Mr. Carlos Moreno, to start, just want to remind you that please prepare your paper for us, because we are right now working on the new website of APGC. After that, we can publish your papers on the website. At the same time, we put them together to create an ebook, electronic book. Hopefully by this year, the end of the year, it would be great if you can submit your paper as well. Between 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000, it's very flexible. You can move toward now, the length that you like. So, Carlos, the floor is yours, please. Go ahead. Carlos from Bogotá, Colombia.
Yes. Hola a todos. Good afternoon, good evening. I thank the Global Network, Alternative Perspective and Global Concept for the invitation. I am very grateful and happy to be with you. As has been said, my name is Carlos Mario Moreno. I am Colombian. I'm a philosopher, and I'm here representing the Colombian Network of Philosophy of Religion. I am going to read my presentation for everyone. Education promoting harmony in the creation. Christian thought explains nature through the concept of creation. Nature is not a divine extension, but was created out of nothing. This Christian concept of creation implies a division between the creator and the created. The creator is God, and the creator are humans and nature. Both humans and nature are on the same level from their separation with the creator. It's important to highlight this to point out that although humans are different from the other created things, we are united to it, and this unity is reflected on the beauty of the diversity and balance between the different parts of the creation. In other words, in the harmony between humans and nature. So our concept of ecology is deeply related to our concept of creation. That is to our religious and philosophical conceptions. For example, Christianity's root in the Platonic belief in the separation between the sensible world and an intelligible world. Promote the abandonment of earthly things and a major emphasis on heavenly things, the salvation of the soul, and get to heaven. Such thinking has promoted in different ways the overexploitation of natural resources, environmental degradation, climate change, and animal abuse. But we believe that this is not the essence of genuine Christianity. Fortunately, humans that can be educated and belief can be reformed. An example of this is the effect that the Protestant Reformation had on Dutch painters who began to paint nature, distancing themselves from the idealism and its limitation to religious painting typical of the European Baroque. This change of mentality inaugurated the golden age of Dutch painting with Gauguin, Belliger, Moulin, whose focus was on the sea and atmospheric weather. One of the most important was Jacob Ruysdael, who painted numerous Nordic landscapes of dark and dramatic pine forests with roaring torrents and waterfalls. God put men in the garden to take care of it. A correct spirituality will understand nature and its responsibility to care for it and use it by virtue for promoting the good of ourselves and future generations by preserving the natural order of nature and its life-sustaining properties. To protect animal and plant species in order to foster biological and medical knowledge, with this potential application in human health. To protect the beauty of nature for purpose of public recreation and to enhance the pleasures of a deeper understanding of the world. So education can be a tool to promote harmony and respect for our environment. In Iceland, a Huxley's novel, the author imagines a utopian future in which the first lesson given to children in schools are about ecology. However, it is a tool that should be oriented with caution. Paraphrasing Levinas, terms such as apprehend, know, among others typical use in academic jargon, imply a certain analogy with a power. And this can be misinterpreted as an unlimited power of man over creation, or that our relationship with nature is based on productivity and exploitation. The education we currently know is crossed by power relations that are expressed in our interactions with the other and the environment, our neighbor and nature. In Foucault's theory of power, power is only transformed into authority, but becomes a claim of possession and control over the other. Such a relationship carries the risk of making the other disappear, of consuming him, of eliminating his otherness. For this reason, we believe that type of risks outlined above remain linked due to lack of interest, disinformation, and ignorance regarding the other. That other is, as I say, our neighbor and nature. Harmony between these factors can be achieved through an education that helps us to recognize beauty in that other. In the Colombian network of philosophies of religion, we are promoting creation of spaces to promote this type of education, or rather of approaches between those interested in the study of religious phenomena, because we believe that it is possible to have a relationship with our neighbor and nature without annihilation of the distance that naturally separates us. We are about to open a workshop of several sessions about Judaism, not as a religious discipleship, but as a search of the beauty that exists in what is different and diverse. I would like to conclude paraphrasing Francis Schaeffer in his book, Pollution and the Death of Man. Genuine spirituality has a reason to treat created things with high respect. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Thank you very much, dear Carlos, for the thoughtful presentation. It was so deep. We enjoyed that. Thank you. The third speaker, Rico.
Thank
Please
you.
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you
Floor is
very
yours.
much. So, yeah, I cannot prevent to address in my own way some points that have been addressed by Iman and Carlos. For example, the question about what is harmony in fact, and what is creation. I'd like to start by asking, what would harmony be if it exists? Because we cannot take it for granted that it exists.
Yeah.
But if it exists, what would it be? And Also, what would harmony not be if it existed? What would not be harmony? What would be a false or erroneous conception of harmony? What I would say right now as an answer is that harmony cannot be an exhaustive or exhaustively accessible blueprint of the cosmos. So I don't think that harmony can be equated to an exhaustively accessible blueprint of the cosmos. Why not? Such a blueprint, exhaustive blueprint of the cosmos would be suffocating. It would be a cosmic prison without the possibility of real change and renewal. And I think a real harmony would be a harmony which is not complete yet. A complete harmony would not be harmonious, cannot be harmonious, insofar as it leaves no space for breathing and for renewal. So in fact, the concept of harmony is internally contradictory, because a full harmony would be, insofar as it is suffocating, no harmony at all. Well, how would I define harmony, provided that it exists? Because we cannot take it for granted, but let us assume that harmony exists. What would it be? And here I think I co-vibrate with Iman's account of harmony, insofar as I would define harmony as co-vibration. In other words, Iman and I are have an harmonious view on harmony. I define harmony as co-vibration of cosmic patterns, co-vibration of cosmic patterns of living creatures and vital processes. That is how I would define harmony. Why do I insist on co-vibration? Because I think that co-vibration is primarily open to experience and only secondarily to intelligence. An intellectual harmony, I would say, will always be partial. An intellectual, fully comprehended and comprehensive form of harmony, and harmony well understood, as if we had some insight in the divine plan with the world, that would be an intellectual harmony. And an intellectual harmony, as some predecessors, philosophical predecessors of the past presented us with, I think of Leibniz, for example, or perhaps Plotinus, and perhaps some classical thinkers, an intellectual harmony would be partial and therefore unsatisfactory. And I would say that it would not be a harmony at all, because if a harmony is unsatisfactory, it cannot be a harmony. Now, my second point, my second question is, does there exist a harmony in the world? Is there such a thing as a harmony at all? If it does, which I think it does, then we can only speak of harmony insofar as there is a co-vibration of cosmic patterns, as I said, of living creatures and vital processes, but these must be experienced. So the essence of co-vibration is that it can be experienced. A harmonious harmony, a true harmony, must be a harmony which can be experienced. And experience is far more than intelligized. Intelligence is only part of the picture. It cannot be all comprehensive. I think that an experience of harmony is the most essential feature of a true harmony. Now, if you ask me, where can it be experienced, if at all? I would give a few examples. I have six examples where I think that a harmony can be experienced, that co-vibration can be experienced. Firstly, I'm thinking of what we call ecosystems. I think you know what that is. Ecosystem, a natural whole within which animals, human beings, and plants live together in an equilibrated situation, ecosystem. A second example of what I would call a harmonious situation, a situation of co-vibration, I would like to refer to the regularity of natural processes, the regularity of natural processes. Some might prefer to speak of laws of nature. The essence of law of nature is not that it is completely determined, because the essence of a law is not determination, but the essence of law is regularity. And the essence of a law, at least what is called a law of nature, is a degree of reliability. A degree of that is, for example, when we're thinking of the law of what we call the law of gravity, the essence of this law is not it being determined that anything should always necessarily fall down to the earth, or some with a higher inner density, but that there is a kind of reliability essential, inherent to it, reliability. So the second example of harmony which can be experienced, regularity of natural processes. The third example, a different one perhaps, is the phenomenon that human beings are in search and have always been in search for an ethics in whichever form. So of course we have a variety of ethical systems and conceptions of the world, but the fact that human beings are and have been in search of an ethics, this very search itself is indicative of a harmony. Fourth example of a harmony is the practice of art, science, religion, philosophy, and again, irrespective of their content. Of course, we have a variety of forms of art, of religion, of philosophies, etc. But the very existence of art, science, religion, philosophy indicates experience-based co-vibration. Experience-based co-vibration. A fifth example of harmony in the world would be the phenomenon of love. Love and friendship between human beings, of course, but also between humans and animals, and why not humans and plants. My final example of harmony in this world, if you wish a proof, and the proof of the pudding, if you know, is in the eating, is the phenomenon, remarkable phenomenon of exceptional human experiences. And I know that some of you are familiar with them, directly or indirectly. You can think here of the example of telepathy, clairvoyance, but also of inspiration, creativity, humans being endowed with talents. These are all examples of harmony existing in the world, which are open to experience. Perhaps partly to intelligence, but the essence is that they're open to experience. And these examples which I gave are examples of non-exhaustive or not all-comprehensive co-vibration. So if you are in love, you co-vibrate with the beloved, but that co-vibration is not exhaustive. There are a variety of riddles which remain, to say the least, suffering of the world around us. So it will be harmony inside a world which is disharmonious. I come to a third question, and that is the question, how is harmony thwarted, counteracted? Because it is counteracted. There is unharmony, imbalance, suffering in the world. The question how harmony is thwarted can be rephrased as the question about the origin of evil. So how does evil come in the world? However, it is impossible to give a definition of evil as such, apart from having a notion of harmony. So you can only speak about evil if you have some notion of harmony. If you do not have a notion of harmony, in other words, in my terms, if you do not have an experience of harmony, you cannot speak in a meaningful way about evil. It would be a meaningless term. Now, given that no harmony will exhaust our experience. No harmony will ever exhaust our experience. It is always possible that something which looks evil, something which looks disharmonious or interruptive, that it will ultimately contribute to a still higher form of harmony, that is of co-vibration. In other words, something might look evil, and we might even be justified in calling it evil. Think of suffering, of genocide, mass murder, etc., evil. But given that any form of accessible harmony will never be all-comprehensive, it might be that what we believe or experience as evil, that evil contributes to a still higher form of harmony, which is as yet inaccessible to us. This is what I hope personally, that suffering will one day turn out to be a part of a still higher harmony, although we are not capable of seeing this as yet. Okay, so if I am to give a preliminary answer to the question about thwarting of harmony, so let's for the moment call it the question of the existence of evil, I would define this thwarting of harmony, in other words of evil, as in terms of a discontinuity, an interruption of co-vibration, although that thwarting might eventually contribute to a harmony, even though at present this is still beyond our comprehension. In sum, even if thwarting of harmony may ultimately contribute to an overall harmony, at present this thwarting will manifest itself as interruptive. So it might contribute to future harmony, but right now I am experiencing war or suffering or sadness or misery. I will experience it as an interruption of co-vibration, as a false note in the musical composition, or as a relapse into the so-called reality. And you can imagine that what I call the so-called reality, that I experience that as disharmonious, as not harmonious, and that I do not like to live in it. Well, concrete examples to make it concrete: hate, strife, revenge, resentment, neglect of responsibility. These are all examples of an interruption of harmony. I come to a close, and I would like to end by asking the question of how to promote harmony, since this seminar is about education as the promotion of harmony, or how to promote harmony. I have two answers to this question. What is necessary to promote harmony? In the first place, self-purification. In the second place, introspective experience. I will highlight them one by one, but very shortly. Let's start with self-purification. So the first requisite for harmony is self-purification. What is self-purification? It is the ongoing need for all of us, for everyone, to purify ourselves. Because provided that our consciousness is a mirror, that it reflects the world, how could our consciousness reflect the world properly if our mind is polluted, if it is dark? You can imagine that someone who has a dark mind, who is beset with sparks of evil or of darkness, such a person will only reflect the outer world distortedly. He or she would deflect the outer world, so not have a proper picture. A cynical person is not likely to reflect the world properly. So self-purification, I think it requires ethical guidelines, whichever. These ethical guidelines should not be taken as an end in themselves, because they tend to be stupid. It's my personal view. Ethical guidelines tend to be stupid, but they are guidelines toward purification. They are preparatory tools for purification. So self-purification, the first means to promote harmony. The second means is introspective experience. after having purified oneself, should I ever be finished, which is always the question, but starting with self-purification, we could reach, if at all, introspective experience. So the world looks not only brighter, but also deeper once it is reflected or mirrored by a pure soul. Now, education, and I come to my conclusion now, education, I think, should contribute to the enhancement of self-purification in our teaching systems. They can continue the way they do, but they should pay attention to self-purification, to self-reflection, making students and pupils aware of themselves. So not just teach them content, but also teach them to look inside, to go inside, to look at themselves. Not, of course, to blame themselves, to only feel guilty, because that doesn't contribute to anything, but just look inside and look at the dark spots we have in our own eyes, in our own minds. And the second element key for teaching, for education, so the first one is enhancement of self-purification and self-reflection. And the second thing, and I think Mahmoud would like what I'm saying right now, I'm inspired at this point by Mahmoud, that is, education should teach beauty. It should teach beauty. Why? Because beauty is not a subjective experience. I repeat, beauty is not subjective, as many modern people like saying that beauty is only a subjective experience of a subjective mind. But I think beauty is the most objective entry to reality. Beauty is the most objective entry to reality. Why? Well, I have an argument, because beauty prompts ecstasy. If you are ravi, if you're upset by beauty, beauty brings one outside of oneself. It can make the spectator completely forget or neglect themselves, and therefore lose their subjective position. Beauty might entail ecstasy, and it is therefore the best warrant for an objective view of the world's harmony. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, dear Rico, for lovely presentation. Great. So it's time to open the floor for discussion and questions, comments. Who's gonna go first? Any comment? Okay, go ahead, Iman, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I have a comment on something that Rico mentioned. Like, I'm very, very happy really with looking at this through your eyes as well, because when you are mentioning intelligence and that intellectual analysis is not enough, I totally agree. And that's why intelligence, I see it different from intellectual. Intellectual is only the analysis. Intelligence brings this wisdom in synthesis, which is key. That's why, in my perspective, we need the heart brain. That's where the heart brain kicks in. And also in relation to how things can look evil on the outside, but in the long run, they help higher form of harmony. Exactly, that's why we have what we call it's a blessing in disguise, or a crisis that of destruction that can lead at the end to a higher ideal that is built in the world. And from an experience point of view, so many humans learn what they want by learning first what they don't want. So we all go through mistakes, if you want to call it mistakes. I don't believe nothing is without a reason. And as a collective, we also commit pains, cause pains. in order for us to learn what we don't want, so that we appreciate and know what we want at the end of it. The danger is when we dwell in what we don't want or live in denial. So thank you. It was excellent, and looking forward to questions, comments.
Thank you very much. I agree with you on the point of intelligence. It was maybe a word choice. I fully agree. So I meant to say intellect, let's say, or rationality. So whereas you can indeed rightfully speak of inner intelligence, and that is a different one. But that will not be an intelligence that has an intellectual grasp of the whole, because that will be an unsatisfactory and not convincing picture of harmony.
Lovely, thank you. Also, it came to my mind that we may argue that the intelligence has two types of faculty. The faculty of understanding via sense perception, and the faculty of reason. It is defined based on the pure concepts in the mind. So the intellect, if I can say intellect, or intellectual, let's say in the philosophical sense of that, intellectual refers to a condition in which people can synthesize the sense perception, understanding with the pure reason. And that is why Kant argues that the harmony, the best kind of harmony that we can define, happens when the mind is able to synthesize the reflection from the sensual world and harmonize it with the pure concepts that are already in the mind of people, and somehow organize them and put them out. That's going to be the knowledge or cognition. And here's what the harmony is for, according to Kantian perspective. Yeah. It's so difficult, sorry. That's coming from a pure reason.
Very complex, because
very complex.
There is a variety of anthropologies. I have been studying the Yoga Sutras from Patanjali, and that's just one example of a completely different, analysis, if you wish, or distinction of the inner faculties.
Yes.
And even the concept of rationality or intellect, or Vernunft in German, it's not uniform. There is a very narrow conception of reason in some philosophers, and others, like Meister Eckhart, the mystical thinker, speaks of Vernunft, of reason, as the receptacle of the divine voice, which is a completely different understanding of Vernunft.
Of course.
So every philosopher has their own conception of human faculties and even of reason. So that makes it complex.
I agree, but the reason why I wanted to emphasize on that idea from Kant is that if you accept that there are certain kind of pure concepts in the pure reason in the mind of people already built in here, and that is the power of human being to enjoy those pure concepts of reason, that gives the person sense of freedom. That is the human being who is able to decide what must be done, what the education should be about, what is the meaning of harmony, etc., etc. Only for that reason, I wanted to mention that Kant has provided a beautiful, perhaps, account of understanding of intellect, intellectual intelligence, with a view into education and harmony. However, thank you very much. Just wanted to to remind you this.
Yeah.
Okay. Carlos, please.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear you. I must confess that it's a very complex topic to talk about education, harmony, and creation. Wow, like my head is kind of swollen, but I found it interesting how maybe if creation is a concept already inside of a religion concept, so it's the topic. It's already establishing a religious assumption that there is a creator. Harmony, of course, and education. Then, if it is below the religious or outside of the religious. The other two will be depending on this. And I found this one complexity of the topic. Now that, of course, the definition of harmony and education will depend on your belief structure and your religious. Just to point, Buddhism will face harmony on top of most inside of yourself, and placing compassion as the basic strategy to purify yourself, but not pretending to change the outside world, or talking about creation. For example, Buddhism will say, like, I don't care about creation, but I do care about education, about harmony. So it depends on, of course, what Rico was saying. It will depend on the person that you're speaking of. I want to mention two things about the ecosystems, because it is kind of my experience, and indigenous communities, on the nature of human power and nature, and how to create harmony in the world. How complex would be to create harmony if the base of most of human civilization is based on the dominion of other human beings in native communities, and the imposition of in an education way of another religion is a very it's a big question. How can we achieve harmony if the basis of our civilization are the dominion of other human beings? And about nature, I will have to make also the questions. I'm happy to hear Carlos that says that it is a misconception of religious belief or Christianity or Catholics that nature is for humans to be dominated, or for us. That's a happy thing that I hear, like, yeah, making progress. But then it's like harmony, it's like a temporary thing, because ecosystems are in constant disruption and chaos. How would you relate, maybe Rico, or if harmony, what does it have to do with resilience, the capacity to come back from a disruption? No, a tree falls in the forest, some plants, some animals are dead, there's a gap of light, and then new plants kind of in a 20-30 years come and grow again. Bacteria, the origin of oxygen was toxic to many species in the world, so it was poison. No, is that an imbalance? How do you, I wanted to make again the question, how, Rico, would you relate harmony with resilience? So I wanted to make that question to Rico, and to Carlos. I'm going to say it in Spanish. Carlos, me gustaría preguntarte, muchas gracias por tu presentación, y es, dentro de la perspectiva que piensas que el cristianismo se renueva y dice que la naturaleza no debe estar separada y no está para el dominio humano, ¿qué retos ves cuando la mayoría de los textos bíblicos y de creencias básicas del cristianismo dan por sentado que el humano es el pináculo y inclusive está como separado de Dios? Como, ¿qué propuestas traes tú? So I was asking Carlos, what would be his answer, like the renovation or revolution in Christian propositions, because most of the Catholics and Christian beliefs will put humans on top of the evolution wrongly and make use of nature. So what is the new proposition of this Christianity? Thank you very much. Sorry if I was too long.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Rico, we go with Rico first. Because the question first was...
Carlos Mario.
Okay, Carlos, you go. Carlos, let's go. Carlos, you go, please.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Carlos Alberto, por la pregunta. Y sí, es una muy buena pregunta porque, pues, digamos, en la Biblia, que es el texto sagrado para el cristianismo, empieza diciendo que, bueno, que el hombre es de la creación, de todo lo que se creó, todo lo que Dios creó, el hombre es el que fue hecho a imagen y semejanza de Dios. Sin embargo, esto debemos como entenderlo en el sentido de que se le da a la salvación, ¿no? Como en el sentido de esta relación de que el hombre debe recuperar esa posición, como que luego en el texto de Génesis dice que el hombre pierde esa autoridad que tiene en el huerto del Edén o en el jardín, la pierde y prácticamente se vuelve como que ya no puede dominar la creación de la manera correcta. Entonces, si empezamos por allí, digamos, la lectura del texto de la Biblia, que comienza así en Génesis, luego en Romanos y en Apocalipsis termina diciendo que la creación también será, digamos, restaurada porque el hombre la ha dañado. Entonces, hay un cuidado de parte de Dios para la creación y ese cuidado se expresará como que en un futuro se expresará ese cuidado con una restauración del daño que el hombre ha hecho en la creación, en la naturaleza. Entonces, sí, para reducir...
Para no hacer tan largo,
Vale.
¿quieres que traduzca esa parte?
Sí, y luego redondeo la idea.
He was answering that yes, indeed, in Genesis, and the human is put away from its salvation due to his damage towards nature, and in that moment he's kind of damned or condemned, and in that moment he lost the dominion of the natural world, taken from God. In Romans and in Apocalypse, in the book of Apocalypse, then it is said that creation would be restored by God in a restoration of the wrongs of the men. So he says, yes, indeed, human was wrongly placed to take care of the full dominion, and he lost control of it. So he's taking out that power, and God will restore out that natural world that was at the moment.
En ese sentido, tanto naturaleza como el ser humano están en el nivel de que deben ser restaurados. Entonces, la promesa espiritual del cristianismo va a haber una restauración de la relación correcta que debe tener o debe haber entre el hombre y la naturaleza.
Yeah.
You want to translate?
So the last part of his question, he said, nature and humans both have to be reestablished. So way in a purification that and by God it will be like the right relationship will be reestablished. That is the promise of Christianity, that human and nature will be reestablished in a proper way. That is what he said.
Can I say something as well?
Yes, Rico. Yeah.
Since I think I share everything with you, both Carlos, Carloi in Greek, two Carlos, one. I would like to at least appease Carlos Alberto Hernandez by pointing out that creation is not to be conceived of as a dogma or as a creed, but rather as an experience. Unfortunately, it has been reduced to a kind of dogma, as something you should believe without being able to verify. Well, that type of language leads us farther and farther away. I think that creation, we cannot define creation, because if you define something, you should be familiar with something similar. However, if creation is the production of something completely new, we have no comparison. Do you see what I want? So you cannot compare creation to human production, because human production can be compared to what animals do or so. But creation, whatever it is to do something incomprehensible, something that cannot be understood. So when we talk about creation, God's creation or human creation, well, we do not know what we are saying. The only thing that we can say is that the creation is to give rise to something new. So that is how I would like to talk about creation. And therefore, I think that what we call artists and philosophers and inspired people, they are participant of creation. They co-create. Well, often, I think Iman will know this, the term co-creation is very popular today. As far as I know, co-creation, it's applied everywhere. But I think that human beings are co-creative with God, insofar, to the extent as they give rise to something unknown, something hitherto unknown. That is how I prefer to speak about creation. And then about, I hope I understood your question about resilience. Could you please?
Resilience and harmony.
Yeah, resilience.
Yes, that if talking about in the ecosystem or in the wild reality, chaos and perturbation, it's necessary for the production of organisms and even the stability, apparent stability. It's an apparent stability. I don't know if harmony, but maybe balance, it's present in an organism, maybe more like a thermodynamic nature of the universe. So if ecosystems are constantly in chaos, but you see that there is some kind of stability that is due to resilience, that when a catastrophe or a excess happens in an ecosystem or in a body, the natural properties of it allows them to recover and rebalance. So do you see the relationship between resilience and harmony, or differences?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would like to point out that there is one unharmonious element in creation or in nature, whatever you prefer, and that is the human being. Because I'm drawing on a philosopher called Plessner. I type it in the chat box. Helmut Plessner. That was a German, a Jewish thinker from the 20th century, an anthropologist, very interesting philosopher, anthropologist. He said, "Der Mensch ist auf nichts gestellt." Human being has been imposed upon nothing. It's difficult to translate. So in man, in woman, in human beings, there is an open space, a relation to nothingness, which makes the introduction of humans in this world a kind of risk, because with man, the possibility of chaos is present. So man is the only thing in nature which produces unbalance. Animals don't do this. It's human beings do this. Now, I believe that is, on the one hand, is the explanation for catastrophes, for ecological crisis. I think it is. It cannot be denied. Humans destroy nature and destroy resilience. But it's my theory that this open space, this introduction of nothingness, will ultimately bring about a higher form of harmony, or at least contribute to it, or be related to it somehow. That's what I think. And that's what I think, that is a super harmony, which is beyond access, something that we cannot understand. And which may be untrue, but which is what I believe. But at least human beings are always destructive of this harmony and resilience, which the rest of the creation is implicitly aiming at. I don't know if this makes sense, Iman.
Thank you, Iman.
Thank you. Thank you, Rico. I agree with what you mentioned in relation to creation being seen as different from dogma. And Carlos, I also would like to explain that I see religion very different from spirituality.
Yes.
Spirituality is really what I resonate with. And for me, it's about soul evolution and about understanding who we are in this universe. And I see a huge connection and interdependence between how we function and how nature functions. Because in nature, you have balance between 4 elements, sometimes 5, if you consider ice as well. But you have earth, air, fire, and water. And nature balances all that, as you mentioned, with its resilience. In the same way, we talk about the 4 elements that I mentioned for humans that we need to balance if we were to have harmony: the emotional, the intellect, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. So in fact, and the reason why we are causing havoc on Earth so far is that we are still in the process of evolution. We are still learning. And unfortunately, that comes at a high price, but we are not finished. We are continuing to evolve and we are learning from mistakes. And that's why we need to heal within before we are able to create sustainable healing without. In fact, because I studied course in quantum physics as well, because that's, for me, is very much connected to spirituality. In quantum physics, the research has revealed that everything, including us, is energy and in constant vibration. And the model for this energy, whether it's in nature or in us or in galaxies, is that the energy moves in a torus. So us and nature and the universe, we all have the same template for energy flow. And when we block this energy flow, that causes disharmony and disease, whether for us or for nature. So the more we are in line with who we are, the more we are able to create consciously and in a harmonious way with the nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you. Carlos.
One question. This question is for Iman and Rico. Is there a way to use music as a tool for the harmony with the creation?
Yes. Go ahead, Iman, please.
Definitely. Music I see music as, if it's the right music, there is sound healing. And that is big part of creating the harmony within our body and within our mental body, within physical body and mental body. So and there are centers for sound healing. And they're in the movie Thrive 2. Okay, if you are able to Google it, there are actually centers, I think in Brazil. I have to check the country again. But anyway, this is an old science. Like sound healing is since the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, they had sound temple healing. So the idea is that every part in our body has a certain resonance frequency. And when that frequency is disrupted, that creates disease. So what they do, what they used to do in sound temple healing in Egypt, and what is being created now, the whole concept is that you find an equal resonance to the frequency, the healthy frequency of that part of the body. And by applying that, you can destroy disease. Music has big part of it. That's why when you go in doing meditations, you Google on YouTube 936 frequency, 582 frequency, whatever frequencies that you are listening to. It's the resonance of that frequency that targets the part in your body or mental body that needs realignment. You can call it realignment. And actually, about 50 years ago, they started research on, and they proved it. There was a machine for curing cancer, and they did it for 40 patients, and they were healed 100% within 3 months. No other drugs used, just the frequency of that machine to rebalance, realign the frequencies in their body. So yes, totally agree.
And in addition, because I subscribe to everything you say, Iman, it happens to be so tragic, perhaps, that human beings have different kind of vibrations. Sometimes when you meet someone, you feel that that person is different from you, that you are on a different tonality. And sometimes you find out happily that you are on the same footing with the other, that you are really co-vibrating. But what music could do, in reply to Carlos, is perhaps to align people with different tonalities by forming them a kind of bridge between them. Like in a symphony, for example, bringing in separate sub harmonies into a greater one, and one which is always greater. And finally, which is my dream for humanity, to embrace humanity as a whole without imposing upon them a rigid structure, which would be destructive. Human beings are different. They will always be different, and so be it. But they're still human beings. And so I think that music could be a kind of, how you say, a kit between people, which could keep people together, even if they have different tonalities, vibrational velocities between themselves. But what is, and a second point I'd like to add is that music can make people ecstatic, to bring them outside of themselves and forget, albeit for a while, their own stupidities or their proclivities or their obsessions. Many people are, the majority, or maybe all of us, are obsessed with things which are not essential, but we are obsessed by them. And they are a burden, and they often create an obstacle between people. And the more we can get rid of them, helped by music or by art, the more we can unite with other people. I think some of you may have had experience of a kind of tryout conferences, which tend to be intellectual. We try to convince the other how intelligent we are ourselves, how much we know, etc. But if we have music, Mahmoud, once we had music in the Leiden conference and elsewhere as well, and that can really open people toward each other, from which also the exchange will benefit. People will be more likely to listen to the other, while otherwise they might have thought, well, I don't care what this asshole says, I'm not going to be convinced. So yeah, just in addition to what you say, Iman, and Carlos, yeah. But I assume, Carlos, that you agree with this. Otherwise,
thank you. And I think that the other Carlos, has something to say about music because he's a musician. Is that right, Carlos? Dances of Universal Peace.
Yes, yes, Mahmoud. I was laughing at Rico because that's exactly what I say. Like, what is this asshole talking about? No, I deeply enjoy the mental research that we do, but of course, as we did in another moment, it is true when we sing together or when we hear music, which we have a particular frequency to for each state of emotion. It is true that sometimes the mental discussion stops and you inhabit emptiness, and then you reconnect with emotions that were inside of you, but you couldn't not reach because of your constant speaking of the mind. Some emotions towards of love, of incomprehensible love, unexplicable love towards beings, and tranquility. And of course, this is basically what many have taught us. Bob Marley, for example, was one of who insisted in this, that you can change people's mind and people's heart if you keep on singing and vibrating into good music. So this is totally true. Se le estaba diciendo Carlos que claro que sí, la música desde hace muchísimo tiempo por muchas personas ha sido una forma de vincularse para parar el diálogo mental y dejar que florezcan emociones inexplicables de amor por otras personas y por el mundo, y que esto lo han discutido personas desde los sufis hasta Bob Marley. Mm-hmm. So yes, this is known in all civilizations. This is why Mahmoud asked me to participate, because I favor the dances of universal peace, which are not even discriminating religious traditions or spiritual traditions or secular traditions even. So everyone basically in the world knows this. Music is a way to bring up harmony, and if you teach music, you will teach harmony, of course. And if you are vibrating, you are creating. So maybe music is the thing that could solve this huge topic that we're discussing.
Yeah, music is a universal language that we all understand. And actually, my daughter, she's 20 and she is into music production. She writes songs and she sings and she plays music, and it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question, if you don't mind. Is the harmony an end in itself, or it is instrumental to achieve another end? What is the purpose of discussing harmony? For what then?
I think
just to reach harmony, and then what after that?
I think harmony is an end in itself,
Yes.
provided that we do not manipulate it. I think any form of harmony that we can experience is only anticipating to a still higher harmony, which is yet to come. But harmony is just fluid enough to embrace people with their differences, different language, different gender, different, etc. So a harmony should be harmony in which people could be fit in without giving up their individuality, their own characteristics. That is what I would say.
So you mean that then harmony is instrumental in human flourishing, human excellence?
I think I would say it is identical. I would equate the two. So human flourishing, I'm very reluctant towards human flourishing. Of course, at first sight, human flourishing seems to be good, but human flourishing can be instrumentalized if not taken properly. I would say that flourishing should be made dependent upon a notion of harmony, because human flourishing on itself could still lead to individualism. And harmony, at least secretly or tacitly, supposes a kind of common flourishing. Not just my flourishing, your flourishing,
Absolutely.
But common flourishing.
Absolutely. I'm not sure how much time we have now. It is almost 8 minutes. But if you don't mind, I'll ask the question from Gianluigi then, because according to Gianluigi, according to Amartya Sen, I agree with you that Rico, even flourishing is instrumental or maybe instrumentalized And what can come after that is human capability or human empowerment. Is that right? So if I accept that as a means of human flourishing, as means of, for example, capability, that you are recall right, everyone should be able to express herself, himself, in whatever way that person pleases. Is that right, Gianluigi? Because he's an expert in that perspective.
Yes, well, I think, yes, I would say this interpretation is possible. Sam is more attentive to the economic question, but this is not excluded from what you say, because, for instance, your perspective, your allusion is, in my opinion, not only Sen, but has been anticipated by Mabubulak in the 70s. In the 70s, Mabubulak was, among other things, one of the founders of the Journal for Human Development. That is, his ideas were then translated into the Journal of Human Development. And Mabubulak was a Pakistan economist, has influenced very much Amartya Sen on the theme of capability. That is, Amartya Sen says many a time, I am in profound debt to the late, because to the late Mabubulak. Unfortunately, Mabubulak died relatively young when he was beginning his research on these fields, and when he was criticizing, for instance, some model of economic development which were based only on the GDP. That is, he said, no, this is not sufficient. You have to see how the GDP is distributed. It is not only a question of growth, but you have to see also, you have to head to the growth, economic growth, some to the rates of growth, for instance, of the income. You have to add also some criteria such as education. Well, of course, education is not so easy to measure, but this was the idea which led to the creation of the Journal of Human Development, for instance, to new statistics in order to see to evaluate the complexity of the growth of a country. And of course, Sen has prosecuted this. Prosecutors has enlarged this way of thinking and of measuring the growth of the person, of course, the capability of a person, the capability of our country. Yes, I would say you are right. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I would just, in addition to Gianluigi and to you, Mahmoud, about the flourishing point. Of course, imagine if I flourish and my partner or my brother, my friend is suffering. How would that not affect my flourishing? If one country is flourishing and its neighbor country is living in poverty, how can that be flourishing? I think the suffering of the other affects the flourishing of the one. Flourishing in itself is nice, but suffering is a spot, a blemish on the flourishing. At least I would feel guilty if my friend were suffering and I was flourishing. So I think flourishing should be contextualized, and we cannot really flourish if others are not flourishing.
You're right, Enrico. I agree with you. Absolutely agree. In the liberal philosophy, flourishing is coming from emancipation, when we are freed from all obstacles, barriers against human growth. However, in the liberal philosophy, it is stated that my flourishing or my freedom depends on your freedom. So when we refer to the conception of flourishing, that means that everyone is obliged to do her own efforts, his own attempts to somehow empower the others to be able to grow as well. So there are two sides to that. One is the negative meaning of flourishing or growth, and that refers to, for example, the condition when I'm freed from all obstacles against my growth. So that being free from is one meaning of flourishing. There is a complementary meaning in it. And that means after I'm freed from, I must dedicate myself to help the others to be free from. And here is that the flourishing becomes a kind of common ground for everyone. It is in liberal thought. When we, for example, look at the works of Kant, for example.
Liberalism is extremely...
that is the classical. That's a kind of ethical liberalism that they want to favor in here.
Yeah.
Look at, for example, the works of Stuart Mill, for example.
Perhaps, but you know much more about it than I do, but I'm extremely reticent towards liberalism because that tends to emphasize individual strive for flourishing by neglecting the flourishing of others. Imagine this session, we have 3 speakers right now. Imagine if one of us was flourishing and the others were neglected. That would not be satisfactory to none of us.
You are right, Jericho.
So often in public presentations, if a group is playing or acting, etc., they should flourish together and not.
That is right. That is, you are right. I agree. We call that one as a kind of distorted face of liberalism.
Exactly.
But if you look at, for example, the works of Immanuel Kant, or even you move towards Stuart Mill, or even contemporary liberal thinkers such as John Rawls, they believe that the flourishing or the act of growth is done through going through a process of normative space of participation. It's called harmony. And a kind of a space is created in which everyone is able to say, hey, listen, I'm here. I have a voice for you. In this process, going through this process, the flourishing makes sense from a liberal perspective when we are all together and we live together. So beyond the negative understanding of freedom, my flourishing, there's another aspect to it. And that's the positive meaning of flourishing, or positive freedom. And that happens when I person, or this theoretical me, becomes a practical I within a we. Here is that flourishing makes sense.
And if you allow me to reply both to you and to Carlos' initial remark on creation, there is a Jewish tradition that connects God and humanity so close to each other that it insists that God will not be illumined when humanity is not flourishing. In other words, if humans are suffering, God will be obscured, obfuscated. But if humans are flourishing, God will be revealed. And I like that approach very much because it's not dogmatic at all.
Yes.
It opens a way of speaking about God as a reflection of human prosperity.
Okay.
That is what I like. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, it's almost, what time is it now?
It's it's
okay,
fine.
1.5. Just want to say thank you very much. As Rico mentioned at the very beginning, next week's seminar gonna be in Farsi language. If you have friends who know Farsi from Iran or Afghanistan, elsewhere, yeah, we welcome them all to be in that seminar. However, the seminar after that is about a very, very complicated topic, very interesting topic. Life goods or the good life? Which one? We want to discuss this in 2 weeks from now. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for your beautiful presentations, comments, contribution, and your questions.
And I will send a recording hereafter, okay? Please forward it to your friends. If I cannot find your email, I will receive it in 10 minutes. I will forward it to all of you, the recording.
Just one more idea came to my mind to make an announcement. We have created an educational thing called APGC Center for the Higher Study of Human Rights and Democratic Development. And the plan is to initiate and create courses about the conception of humanity, individuality, rights, responsibility, development, all the things. That is just the first announcement. Hopefully in the future, maybe by the end of this year, this summer, we can, work further on that educational center. And I'll let you know the result after that. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Masalama.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias, Carlos.
Un gusto, Carlos.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Bonsoir.
Tot ziens.
Adios.
Adios.
Adios. Goda.
Adiós.
Hey dag.